Please welcome Director Easterly and Dale to the S4 main stage.
So welcome to S4, Jen.
Thank you.
We are so happy to have you here. I know you have a very wide swath of things you have to do, and ICS is just one of them, but we've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm just going to jump in.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's start broad, and then maybe we can, go down to the current events. If you look at 2022, 2023, what are two of the top 2 or 3 goals you might have or objectives? And very interesting on those, I'd like to know what kind of metrics, how do you know if you're succeeding?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. Just to step back a sec, I think most of this audience understands CISA, because I know my predecessor has spent time here. But we were really set up 3+ years ago to be America's cyber defense agency, right? To help reduce risk to the cyber and physical infrastructure that Americans rely on every hour of every day. And unlike other places where I've worked in my career, whether that's the Army or the National Security Agency or in counterterrorism, where the government arguably has monopoly power, in cybersecurity, we're just a partner with private industry and our state and local colleagues. And so, particularly because the vast majority of infrastructure is owned by the private sector. And so those partnerships are so incredibly important. And among, one of my top priorities is the security of industrial control systems and operational technology. And that's why I was really excited to come down here to be with this community, because this really has to be about collective cyber defense. And so when we talk about the goals, Dale, let me lay out 3 of them.
Okay.
I'll try and use a little alliteration with people, process, and partnerships. Okay. People, to me, is always the most important thing, but in this case, I'm going to start with process. Okay. Process is not sexy, but it is super important. And one of the things we were asked to do by the White House in July of last year, based on what's called a National Security Memorandum, we were directed to come up with baseline goals. We call them cybersecurity performance goals, CPGs, because you need an acronym for everything in the US government, as you know. And so we were asked to work with NIST and to lay out the cybersecurity performance goals, and we did it across about 11 categories, from risk management to vulnerability management to incident response to data access to configuration management, all of that, laying out what the top line goal is, what the rationale for that goal is, a series of objectives, and then to your point about metrics, essentially samples of evidence. How can you show that you've actually met those goals? Now, we were asked to publish the first series of OT goals by September of last year. We went out to the community, the ICS working group, and asked for their feedback. They came back with some great feedback. We published an update that included both OT and IT in January. Since then, we've received about 1,000 comments, and so we're adjudicating. One of the most popular comments was about, how do I think about this with respect to the NIST cybersecurity framework that the private sector now has thankfully gotten very used to? Well, those of us who are familiar with the CSF, it's very, very broad, very extensive. What the cybersecurity performance goals are supposed to be, they're going to map to the framework, but they are going to lay out measurable, actionable, and attestable and prioritized goals, baseline goals that any infrastructure owner or operator can look to. And I can't stress enough how important it is. If you all have not seen these goals, please come to our website. Check them out. We are all about feedback and improving and making sure that we are working closely with the community, particularly, I know this is a very sophisticated crowd of experts, so we can absolutely use input and guidance and feedback. So please look at that. We're adjudicating guidance right now. We hope to get the baseline goals out by fall of this year, and then we're going to do sector-specific goals. So these are designed to range across sectors, and then we'll work with each of the critical infrastructure sectors. But again, designed to be measurable and actionable by providing sample evidence. So that's sort of the process piece.
Before you move to people, let's talk a little bit about that. So one of the questions I actually had later down in my list here was, CISA has put out a lot of information, which is great. And actually, some of the things that you've done, I think, have been excellent from a marketing perspective. The bad practices guide, or the bad practices list, the graphic novel.
Yep.
I think really engaging the community with different types of messaging is good. But one of the things I've been confused on is there's been a lot of guidance documents.
Yep.
Like every time there's a new in control or pipe dream or whatever, any time you put out these recommendations, they're similar, there's overlap, but they're different.
Yep.
So if someone was to say, what is the one document I should look at?
Yeah.
Is it this document you just talked about? Is that kind of the North Star that they should say, this is what we should do and everything else is just supporting material?
Yeah, that's the goal that we're trying to get to, right? We're trying to drive this common baseline and then the sector-specific goals across the community. Look, I just spent 4.5 years in the financial services sector.
Yeah.
I know how crazy it is to have the government coming at you with all these different signals saying, we need this, we need that, and none of it's harmonized. They ask for slightly different things. And frankly, Dale, it's one of my concerns because what I don't want is to drive our private sector partners in a direction where it's all about compliance box checking. That was something that I worried about doing cybersecurity at Morgan Stanley, but rather actual risk reduction. And that's a really important goal with this latest legislation, the Cyber Incident Reporting Act, as we work with all of our partners, some regulators, some not, but to try and harmonize all of this. So again, we are not burdening the private sector in what we are asking them to do or asking them to give us, and we're not burdening us with a bunch of noise. What we want to do is get signal. And so I would say that these CPGs are the common baseline, and then we'll build off the sector specific that we hope to do over the next 2 years.
And then just one other quick question on that. In terms of metrics, so the documents do have a metric. Are you going to gather information from the sectors? So are you going to come up with like an oil and gas rating and an electric rating? And is that going to be voluntary, or how are you going to get that information from these entities?
Well, I mean, certainly we would love to do that, right? You and I know this is not a trivial endeavor, right? The elusive measures of effectiveness and measures of performance. One of the things that I did when I came to CISA, I actually changed the mission statement slightly. We used to be to understand and manage risk. So I changed it to understand, manage, and reduce risk, right? Making my job and my team's job a little harder. But if we're just managing risk, I don't think we're doing what we need to do as America's cyber defense agency. So we need to be able to work with the community to reduce risk. So I am in your headspace in terms of getting actual things that we can measure to say that we are reducing risk. These sample evidence is sort of the start of that. But I'm really interested in working with the community because I know from my time in the private sector, there's a lot of work being done on this. And I think it's being done in a good way because boards are now starting to ask these questions in a really important way, right? 5-6 years ago, or when you started S4, boards probably had no idea. Cyber was like this IT thing, right?
Exactly.
And now boards are asking these questions, and they're the ones who want to understand all my investment, how am I reducing risk? And so the baseline, again, is working off these evidence, which I then hope can actually feed into measures of effectiveness to reduce risk.
Okay. So how about people now?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I get back to people?
I stopped
okay,
you from people,
cool.
your favorite.
Super cool. It is my favorite. So one of the things, and this is why I'm so psyched to come down here, because this is the community that we need help from, is we are going to expand considerably our ICS technical team. We just put out 20 job vacancies. I've got a great team here of folks, people like Jay Gasley and Lindsay Cervornik and MJ Emanuel, a whole team of folks out there. And so if people are interested in coming and working in the government, whether it's for a couple years or for a long period of time, understanding what we do, defending the nation, so we've got those new roles coming in. The other thing is we just got these new authorities. It's called the Cyber Talent Management System, CTMS. The Congress set it up about 7 years ago, and it took 7 years to implement, so welcome to bureaucracy. But I get to benefit from it. And so what it is, it allows us to hire people much more flexibly, so not the 20-plus steps that you have to go through to come into government, which drives me up the wall. And we can also pay closer to market. not a huge amount, but in some cases, upwards of $300,000, which is a lot for the government. Now, as we know, nobody comes into government to make money, right? They come into government to serve your country, to get the experience of defending the American people. But we do realize that we need to be more competitive. And so we are hiring for a senior ICS technical expert who's going to be part of our Office of Technology to really help drive our vision and our strategy. As you probably know, when Chris set up CISA, we went through something called CISA 2020, and all those acronyms that people had become slightly familiar with from the NCIC. Of course, we're still US CERT, we're still ICS CERT, but all of that became our cyber division.
Right.
And so we have that expertise, but we want to bring in somebody really senior who, again, can help drive the vision, the strategy, and a lot of the outreach that we're doing with the community. So look for that posting as well.
Okay.
We're excited about that. And look for the other 20 job postings that we have going on. And then, can I talk partnership, or do you have something you want to ask?
No, I was just thinking I should have tried to sell you a sponsor booth here, like a cabana or
Yeah.
something. You could have done recruiting there.
Why didn't you?
Well, I wasn't smart
Always
enough.
looking for an angle. Do you want to apply? You might want to apply.
I think it's going to be very competitive to try to get
Right.
these people. I think a lot of these
I
vendors
hope
are trying to
so.
hire people.
And we offer remote work. You could do it from Maui.
Oh, there you go.
I keep trying to get Dale to host this thing in Maui next year. It starts with an M, ends with an
Okay,
I.
partnerships.
Right? Exactly.
Okay, let's go to
All right,
partnerships.
partnerships. Okay. As I said at the outset, this is not something the government can do, right? We are just a partner with industry. And so we set up this thing called the JCDC, Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, about 8 months ago. I launched it when I spoke at Black Hat. And the theory of the case is we want to be able to work closely with our industry partners to be able to understand the threat.
Right.
Just as we saw in SolarWinds, it's not the government that's going to detect malicious activity on critical infrastructure. It's very likely going to be a company like FireEye, like Mandiant, like a big technology company, because technology underpins the backbone of all of our critical infrastructure. And so working together with our private industry partners, we've actually had some pretty good early success. It's early days, but working on Log4j, the vulnerability from December, working on Ukraine, all of the tensions and the potential threats around, I know we're going to talk a little bit about Shields Up. But as we're growing this, I'm super excited to announce we're actually tapping into the expertise of the ICS community. And so we just put out an announcement. We are working initially with about 10 or so companies from Bechtel and Clarity and Dragos and GE and Honeywell and Nozomi Networks and Schneider Electric and Schweitzer Engineering Labs and Siemens and Xylem, all together as part of JCDC ICS, or JCDC ICE, I like to call it. But so the idea is we're going to tap into the ingenuity, the innovation, the expertise of this particular community, the ICS OT community, to enable us to work with critical infrastructure. We're going to start with an exercise with our pipeline friends, and then we're also working with water and chemical, and really tap into that industry expertise. So I am super excited about that. And, we've been working, I think Rob was up here before, and maybe Megan mentioned this. We put out this product about some tools around ICS SCADA, pipe dream, and controller, whatever you want to call it. But we work with our federal partners on that, both FBI, NSA, DOE, but also got fabulous input from Mandiant, from Dragos, from Schneider Electric, and so really, and from Palo, I think, as well. And so working with industry and having them enrich and make these products better, I'm really excited about JCDC ICS for that. And so, those are the initial companies. We welcome anyone who wants to work with us, and we're excited about building that partnership. I think it's incredibly important to get this collective defense right.
I think that's a good move. I know there was rumbling in the community when the first list came out, and we're like, where are we? So there was some rumbling. So I think that's a really good addition to. Is it like a subgroup or something? Are you going to create these subgroups?
Yeah. Let me address that, because I want folks to understand. So the first group were the technology companies, the backbone infrastructure, the ISPs, CSPs, cybersecurity vendors. And the theory of the case on that was everything's underpinned by technology. And so we wanted to be able to really see the dots together, connect the dots, and drive down risk to the nation at scale. When the Ukraine war happened, we actually brought in some finance companies, so JCDC Finance, JCDC Energy, and then JCDC ICS is really this group that is going to help us specifically focus on industrial control systems and operational technology. That, of course, has been a priority for the administration, really since Colonial Pipeline, as you recall. Which gave us a lot of lessons learned about how we can work better as a community. And so what we're trying to do is really expand this platform, because I think the other point to make that's unique and important for this community, and Rob Lee might have mentioned this, look, we were built to be America's cyber defense agency, but there's a whole federal cyber ecosystem of everybody that has a really important role in this. FBI, NSA, US Cybercom, people like Energy, the Department of Energy, the TSA. And so what JCDC does is, CISA, it's a platform, but CISA is just one federal partner. It brings together all of those partners so that you can actually go to one place and be able to work with all of the federal partners and with the private sector, and you don't have to have a PhD in government to figure out who to interact with. That's what Congress recognized, and frankly, it was one of the motivating factors why I came back from Morgan Stanley to the government, because I just felt the government was kind of incoherent. You were getting signals from all these different places, and it's why we have worked really hard to make sure that we are joint sealing everything. So you saw DOE, you saw NSA, you saw FBI. We're working very closely with industry partners. Later today, we're going to release a new product with our FBI, our NSA, our Five Eyes partners that was enriched with a lot of information from our industry folks. That is really a detailed overview of Russian state-sponsored cyber actors and Russia-aligned cyber criminal groups. So we have learned a lot over the past several months, and we're putting this out along with the mitigation guidance. And so everybody should see that around 1300 today, which we're excited about. But the joint seals are really important because one coherent, cohesive U.S. government, as opposed to coming at you in various different ways, I think is incredibly important to make sure that we're doing this as a community.
Okay. Well, let's pivot to talk a little bit about Shields Up, which I think probably most of the audience has heard about, and you and Rob are on 60 Minutes talking a little bit about it. The shields go up, we're in a heightened security posture. When will the shields come down, and what will it take for the shields to come down?
I know, right? So a couple things. First of all, we wanted to make sure that we were instilling a real sense of urgency. Everybody in this room has a sense of urgency every day. I don't need to tell this community shields up, and I don't need to tell most CISOs or most network defenders shields up. We're shields up all the time. That signaling had a lot to do with business leaders, small, large, critical infrastructure owners and operators, to make sure that they understood that there was a real sense of urgency to this threat. And so it's been a campaign that I think has gotten a lot of good traction. We've been able to use the Shields Up webpage as a one-stop shop. Again, I like the simplicity of being able to go to one place to find all the information about the threat advisories, to find the mitigation guidance, whether it's large, small businesses, ransomware, individuals, and then guidance to CEOs. And the most important thing we're telling CEOs is empower your CISOs, right? And we want to continue to do that. But so the question is, what is Shields? I'm not going to say Shields down. None of us should ever be Shields down in this threat environment. We'll go to what I'll call Shields normal. And, we have to realize that many of the things on that website that are really things that we should be doing all the time that, frankly, we're not. If we were doing it all the time, we wouldn't have these attacks very often, and we've seen the scourge of ransomware. But a couple of things that we, in particular in this environment, we've asked people to lower the thresholds for reporting.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that if there is leading edge information about attacks, that we're actually bringing that in, and we've had to put extra people on from our team on that. We have talked about being, on the ready for crisis response. We have talked about preparing for the worst and being ready to disconnect systems if we need to. I think those are things that specifically are in this environment that are not necessarily in an environment where we're shields normal. But I think at the end of the day, if people are doing the things on that website, it will stand us better as a nation, frankly. And so I hope that even when we go back to shields normal, that the basic things that we need to be doing around hygiene, which if we were doing them, we'd be in a lot better shape, right? We have instilled this sort of sense of urgency. For me, I'm a little bit on this campaign about, what do we do personally to keep ourselves safe online? And this, again, this group are all experts and very sophisticated, but all of us can be evangelists for not just the ICS and the OT community, but what we need to be doing just day to day, or on the IT side, since really that's likely where most things are going to start. And so things like multi-factor authentication, things like updated software, passwords, all that type of things, I would ask for this community's help in getting that word out across the country.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are security support for their families and their parents.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure they are.
Trying to do all that stuff. But I guess I think a number of us in the security community, I think the messaging has been very effective for the executives and the business leaders. And I think sometimes, I know sometimes I underestimate the importance of that, just because when you live it day to day, you kind of forget how many people don't think about these things. But on that list, they were things that everyone should do, and then lowered thresholds or increased monitoring. But probably from your Morgan Stanley days and even before that, you can't be at this higher threshold all the time.
100%.
And I would even say there's things that we could do more than what was on that list. And I think you and I corresponded a little bit about that. Is there going to be like a shields really up or super up? And is there, and I worry that if we don't go to shields normal in a week or so, you can't keep people at a heightened state for very long.
Yeah, look, man, I agree with you. We're the network defenders. So I've got folks out here and folks back at CISA that are, and I worry a lot about this. I am a huge advocate for mental health. We've made 2022 the year of mental health and well-being. I have personal experience with this, and I lost my brother to suicide. And so I want to make sure that we are taking care of all of our folks. And frankly, I worry a lot about burnout, and I worry a lot about vigilance fatigue. And so I will be the first one who's excited to say shields normal, because my folks and many of the folks in this room probably need a frickin' break, right? And so we're not there yet, though. I mean, we're putting out a product today. You saw the product we put out. But I am very, very mindful of vigilance fatigue, and I want to make sure that we are giving the right signal to the community. And so we're very focused on when we can go back to a posture that people can get a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah, okay. Let's shift again, and you kind of mentioned it early on, but I want to talk a little bit about regulation in this space. So Chris Inglis said, I think in front of Congress, enlightened self-interest, that's apparently not working. Market forces, that's apparently not working. And then I think you about the same day at a same hearing or such, you said, it seems to me that voluntary standards are probably not getting the job done, and that there's probably some sort of role for making some of these standards mandatory. Now, that's a congressional issue, but they look to CISA and the administration as to what they should be doing. What's your view on regulation for some of the various sectors here that don't have it?
Yeah, I think there is a place for regulation, but I should say CISA is not a regulator, right? And I don't want to be a regulator. I've been very clear with the Congress on that, because I think the magic of CISA and why we were built is all about voluntary partnerships. And to be a successful partner, you have to be able to build trust, right? Trust is the key to any relationship, whether it's a business deal or a marriage. You have to trust that partner, and I am keenly aware that it's hard to build trust and it's easy to lose it. And if you think that somebody is going to hammer you or there's some sort of penalty, That's not the type of relationship that I want, or nor do I think is going to be productive with respect to our mission, which is as America's Cyber Defense Agency. That said, I have seen regulation be effective. Where financial sector is highly regulated, as you know. But I've also seen it, as I mentioned earlier, Dale, where you have so many different regulators coming at you, trying to figure out how to differentiate what you owe them, that timeline on which you owe it, and then the resources that you're going to allocate to do that, I worry gets you away from operational risk management and gets you stuck in this compliance box checking bucket. So I think there is a role for cybersecurity regulations, but I think it's really important that the government figures out how to harmonize what we're asking for. And so we're dealing with this now with this new cyber incident reporting legislation, which I actually think can also, if we do it right, get to your point about understanding metrics, right? Right now, we probably get 30% of the incidents that occur. Once this regulation goes in place, we can actually have, I think, a much better baseline to show whether, in fact, we're reducing incidents or not. But we have this with other agencies, the FCC, the SEC, that are looking at asking for reporting requirements. And again, I don't want to create this burden on the private sector. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's productive. So while there's a place for regulation, our focus is on working collaboratively with the private sector and then ensuring that as much as possible we can help to harmonize requirements. And I would draw you back to the cybersecurity performance goals. Because if you have these, worked with the community consultatively, if you have this common baseline, again, mapped to the NIST cybersecurity framework, if you have these sector-specific goals that we worked collaboratively with the sector and we all agree on that, those can be the driving force for what we're saying are those minimum standards that we expect, because critical infrastructure is all about national security, economic prosperity, but importantly, for public companies anyway, for what shareholders should expect, for what board members should expect. And so I think you create an ecosystem that is more about collective cyber defense as opposed to just compliance.
But then do you see, for example, the water ISAC, and it's funny, the water ISAC suggested that they might follow the NERC SIP model.
Yep.
And whenever I tell that to someone in electric, they roll their eyes and say, oh, they shouldn't do that. That would be a big, big mistake.
Yeah.
It's funny to see their faces. But are you going to leave it then up to like EPA to decide what, to work with Congress for what should be water regulations and TSA for pipelines and that you're just advising them in that sense?
Well, so the Congress set us up with a couple important roles, and one of them was to be the national coordinator for critical infrastructure, cybersecurity, and resilience.
Right.
Because you have these sectors, they have different regulators, right? 16 sectors, you have these things called sector risk management agencies. So finance has Treasury, electricity has energy, pipelines has TSA, as you said, water is EPA. But we work closely with each of them to make sure that, and this is what goes back to the common baseline for the cybersecurity performance goals, to make sure that we are asking from a common perspective, the same things across all sectors, and then what those sector risk management agencies do are focus on sort of the technical aspects of why water ICS may be different from electricity ICS or pipeline ICS. And so, but we're the national coordinator because you can't look at sectors in a silo. We know that, right? In finance, it didn't matter if we spent billions of dollars, as we did, on our cybersecurity if the power went down, if the telcos went down, right? So everything is connected. Everything is ostensibly vulnerable, made even more exacerbated by the fact that you have these supply chains underpinning everything. And so we have to work with EPA, we have to work with TSA. They're the regulator, and so they regulate and they develop those regulations, but we're there to provide technical assistance and support and to help make sure that there are harmonized standards across at the common level across each of those sectors.
Okay. Well, we're almost out of time here. I have one thing I wanted to tell you, and then I'll give you a chance to tell the audience anything we didn't ask about, because I'm sure they're so thrilled you're here.
Awesome.
But on the in-controller pipe dream thing, there was a key sentence in the CISA alert or bulletin. The tools enable them to scan for, compromise, and control affected devices once they have established initial access to the OT network, which is essentially 10 years ago we did something called Project Basecamp, which just showed all these PLCs and things were insecure by design, that once you got through the perimeter, you could turn things on and off, you could reprogram the logic. CISA, and even before that, DHS, has never said that those things should be secured. So I think that's a really big hole right now, is that it's just kind of like, yeah, this is really bad stuff and we're going to live with it for another 10 years. So I hope that you and your team sometime in the next year or two can get on that big megaphone and say, see these things that are completely insecure and really important. Yeah. We need to put a little effort on that. So that's my pitch to you.
Yeah.
But now let you make your pitch to the audience. What else would you like them to know?
Hey, first of all, I love feedback. Yeah. I treat feedback as a gift, and I have a tremendous respect for the network defenders who are doing this in the world of ICS and OT and across the board. And so we love that feedback. I look at this as collective cyber defense. We depend on this community. And so I think it's a great point, and I'd love to work with you and the rest of this community to make sure that we get our messaging right, because we're the youngest agency in the federal government, right? We're growing, we're building. We do want to have that megaphone, but we can't do it without the community. And so I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited about the opportunity to continue to strengthen and deepen our partnerships with this community, to work together. I'm excited about the JCDC ICE effort, the people that we're hiring. You gave me a hard time on the website, the old website. So just for you, Dale, we updated our website today.
The ICS CERT page?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
For Dale. This is my gift to you, my
I'll
friend.
have to check it out.
Yeah.
It'll make my Friday news and notes.
You go to CISA.gov/ICS.
Okay, great.
This is for you.
Great.
Call it Dale's special page.
Thank you so much.
No, but seriously, this was a great motivator to actually get a bunch of really important stuff done between JCDC and all the hiring and that web page to be the place to go to that's updated and has valuable information. But again, please continue to provide feedback. We are here with gratitude and humility, and we want to be great partners. So let's work together.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it.